great experience. So my company is like I'm one of the co-founders of REHUMAN, and we are a digital identity company, and we focus on privacy and security for Web3. And we were founded in 2019. And my background a little bit, I have over 10 years in digital identity space. I've worked mostly for enterprise companies. And in about 2019, we decided we can do something better. That's when we really thought that Web2 mistakes shouldn't be continued in the Web3 environment. So that's the start of REHUMAN so far.
Wonderful. So what would you like to share with us about today in regarding identity? Maybe, first of all, we should cover a little bit around Identity 101 topic, like what are the main security aspects we should consider when we're talking about identity?
Okay, so would you like me to start the presentation?
Sure, you can start presentation. I really looking forward to more free discussion. With your presentation, I have some questions, and I'm pretty sure audience will also ask questions in the comments. I'll monitor that.
Okay, so here, this is a bit about us and what you just asked. And some of the products that we have is reusable ID verification, identity wallet. So every single thing that you see here is everything to do with identity. That's what we do. So as we are going to talk, we will talk about what's Wall today and why identity matters, whether it's Web 2 or Web 3, or now some people are even calling Web 5. So we can talk about that high level. So these are all recent news, except for, I think, LastPass, which was back in 2016. So and most of these issues are happening because of the credentials. So, for example, recently PayPal, when they got hacked and 35,000 accounts got hacked, it was due to credential stuffing. And I'm excited to talk in front of the cyber community because when I talk about these things, I have to explain. So let me know what you would like me to explain further on, and I can go in even more detail. So it's totally like, as you said, like it'll be a more so of a conversation style. So recently, what you call T-Mobile lost 37 million user data, HubSpot. Then we have now NFTs that can also be what you call used as malware. Google ads are even, so all these things, they look like they're all disconnected, but end of the day, they are all connected to identity. So when I say identity, we will go into what I mean by identity, but here it's identity of the provider. So let's say I have to run ads on Google. How do you know who I am? Am I
Well,
the right person? Yeah.
it's interesting that you touch this because we talk about identity or specific credential, but once you bring conversation about Google ads, for example, or any other ads, it's already more towards the profiling of the identity, right? The behaviors of the identity. So when you talk about identity, do you also include like further scope of it?
So can you define like what further scope, like in what sense?
Well, I
Like
mean the profiling of behaviors of individuals. Like
not
for
not
ads,
at that.
which ads are relevant? No?
No, not. So right now when we discuss identity in current and future world, we are mostly talking about just the credentials itself. So how can we, because right now in Web 2, what happens is like when your user data is shared or when you create a Google account, you don't know, according to the third-party sharing law, who's actually accessing your information. And that's the problem. With what we are about to talk about, decentralized identity or user-owned identity, with that, you can stop that. Right now, if let's say you create any account on any of the websites, and there's a third-party rule where anybody, like literally anybody, whether it's hackers, government agencies, or foreign companies, or whosoever, they can buy that data, and it's legal to do so. And there's nothing the user who has created the data or whose personal information is being shared, they can do anything about that. So with decentralized identity, you can revoke, and that's where the beauty comes in. And also, when it comes to running ads, the profile, for example, right now on Google Ads, some of the scams are running they will get their account approved saying they are just a computer repair company. But when the user clicks on it, they are taken to, let's say, PayPal, and they're asked, hey, there was a problem with your PayPal account or something, enter your. So that kind of check, Google is not doing it, where this information is going. Whereas if you create an account using a what you call something like a digital identity wallet, the person you are transacting, their real information will come. Otherwise, it's kind of like a SSL certificate on steroids. Because SSL certificate with Encrypt Me and other places, anyone can get a SSL certificate, but it still is better than just using your normal HTTP and unsecured means. With Identity Wallet, it's a peer-to-peer communication, which means when you are communicating with, let's say, this ad, first thing will be like, Helen, would you like to share your information with computer repairs? And suddenly you'll be like, whoa, I was on PayPal, not computer repairs, because they won't be able to actually communicate with Google if they don't have the verified identity. And that's the problem. It's not as simple as just creating an account on what you call decentralized wallets or decentralized identity. And you can go as deep or as anonymous you want, and you can also share as much information you want. So it allows you both ways. So it's not a rigid structure. I hope that answers.
It does. Yes, it does. So when we go into Web3 identity, I don't know if you're going to cover next or you still have more background that you'd like to share. It's very interesting how, yes, thank you. So very interesting how Web3 kind of wraps that topic.
Okay. So yeah, before we go into the identity space, let's talk about just high level. What is Web3? And I won't use, I promise, no jargons, nothing. So in simple, Web3 term was coined by Gavin Wood. He's one of the co-founders of Ethereum, and now he's the founder of Polkadot, which is another blockchain that's more efficient and has raised a lot of funds, and it's a very big community. So he was the one who coined the term Web 3.0. But in simple terms, Web 3.0 is a newer version where it's all about the users and the ownership of assets. Second line where I wrote, it says in theory, because I don't want to make things as absolute that decentralization will fix every single thing. Blockchain will fix every single thing, because that's not true. So in theory, this version of the web is more decentralized, more secure, and equitable. But that's in theory though. And we can talk, and you can ask me more questions and we can cover that. But some of the examples of Web3 would be like, for example, identities, like such as identity wallet. Storage. So right now, 80% of the web is controlled by 5 companies. So if you have to think about any kind of storage, you will think about AWS, Google, Microsoft, or maybe 1 or 2 other companies, Oracle, or you name it. Whereas in decentralized web or Web 3, the storage is, let's say you have a computer and your computer has 500 gigabytes, and then my computer has 500 gigabytes, and I only use 250. I can partition remaining hard drive, and I can share that, and I can earn money by sharing my storage. Same thing you can do with your internet. So I'm not always using my office internet, but I pay monthly. What if I can allow, let's say, decentralized VPN services to use my internet when I'm not using it? Or they can use simultaneously depending on my bandwidth. So that way your internet is decentralized and you're using different areas and you're not using one provider. So all of us with internet at home, we can become these mini internet subscribers or internet providers in sense. Same goes for social. So social, like with the rise of Mastodon, anyone can spin up servers and they can communicate all across. That's another thing. There's another YouTube similar platform also called Odyssey, and you can do the same thing. And unlike YouTube, if you talk about certain topics and YouTube disagrees with you, they will either demonetize you, they will block your account. With decentralized social, it's a good thing or also a bad thing, because bad actors, they will continue talking, but the beauty about that is they can be limited in their silos. So if, let's say, somebody spin off a server to share hate-related videos, they will what's going to happen? Everybody will move away from their server. So yes, they are online, but they're talking to only 5 people that are listening to them. That's the beauty about decentralized social. Same goes for the communication protocols. One of the examples I would say is Signal that most people use, especially right now with if you are activist or you are speaking for women rights or you're speaking on LGBTQ rights or racism, you name it. There's so many people who are activists, but every single country is very polarized against identifying who these activists are, and people are using Signal. Unfortunately, Signal can be detected unless you go through certain steps to secure it. But there's social media messaging platforms such as Session and other ones are there where you don't even need a phone number. So technically, not even the company knows who you are, and you don't need a provider. So because Signal, you have to have a phone number. So if you are in the United States or Canada, your provider knows, and they'll be like, okay, this person is using. And if that government is really into your business, they will know more information. Same goes for content and financial assets, which is Bitcoin or your Ethereum, and you name it, all these cryptocurrencies. You can send this without any middle party. So that's what basically the decentralization means, that anyone has the capability to do so, but that also brings many problems. We'll go over it. So this is a high level stack of what Web3 looks like. So Helen, any questions so far, or would you like me to? We good?
I think it's okay for now, if you can
Okay.
continue.
Absolutely. So in Web3, this is what you call a decentralized internet. Here, blockchains, they form the foundation of what we call Web3 is. And one thing I didn't put here is called metaverse. And I'll go into it, but this is purely just for the web. So blockchains are there, and blockchains are of all kinds. Like they are blockchains, they are fast, they are blockchains, they are slow, they are blockchains that use different kind of consensus. And consensus is how everyone on the network agrees. So if, let's say, I were to send you $10 or 10 Bitcoins or 5 Bitcoins, how do I know that I'm sending it to the right address? How do you know that I even have that? That's why we need these third parties called miners. They will validate the transaction. But this transaction is visible to everybody. So that's why there are different types of blockchains. Some blockchains are private. Some blockchains are semi-permissioned, where there's a lot of actors and a lot of people can validate, but only the allowed people. Like, I mean, it's not going to be one or two companies. Conversations go whether that's decentralization or not, but we will go into what is decentralization right after this slide, and I'll explain where most people get hung up on and why many people say Bitcoin is better than Ethereum, because Ethereum just moved to something called proof of stake, which reduces the amount of energy it uses. So it's more greener than it used to be, right? But there's pros and cons on both sides. So there's no one solution that's best, and that's why there's so many blockchains. Now, the next layer is layer 2, which is infrastructure layer, your authentication, your security, storage, and communication. So in this layer, this is where the identity part comes in. Like you will have something like your OAuth or Connect ID or OpenID Connect, something of that sort. Storage, there's IPFS, there's Filecoin, there's a lot of other decentralized storages are there. And communication, it's the protocols. So for example, there's a matrix protocol that's really secure, it's open source, and anyone can spin off their own server. So you need something to communicate, you need something to chat. You can even chat with device to device without even being on a server. So your device acts like a server. So this is the beauty of Web3, that there's no one way to achieve your goal. There's so many ways, and there's so many new ways that people are exploring, that you can do this, you can do this, this is how you can earn money. The next layer, which is our function layer, that's NFTs. NFTs brought, I would say, crypto community and Web3 to the forefront in 2021 and 2022. Because for first time, anybody, like it just shows that anyone can create anything and then people can see value in it. And I do see that going forward, whether people agree or disagree, that's not me to decide, but I do think NFTs will continue to grow as people find more and more everyday uses. Same goes for gaming. So far in gaming, people spend so much money playing games. While they play games, they have to buy, let's say, weapons or armor. You can keep those. They're yours. They shouldn't belong to a company that you are buying from. But right now, that's how it is. That's how these new games are coming on. And the better you get at these games, you can earn tokens. And these, so whole, what you call the flow goes, you're playing the game, you authenticate who you are, and the blockchain records the record that yes, Helen or Sid, they were playing this game on this date, and we can use any anonymized ID. Like we don't have to use a real name, and that record is there. So if, let's say 6 months later, if that company or that game is not even in the market, we can still prove what we did. So blockchains are really good to keep proof of records, what you have done. Same goes for DeFi, content creation, such as Odyssey. You can upload your content. You can even sync that to YouTube, and all your content created moves over. And as people watch, you get funded, like you get paid in tokens. But same thing goes for Brave browser. So that's the next layer, which is the access layer. Access layer is how users like you and I, we are interacting with these technologies. So wallets is one of the best ways to authenticate yourself or to store your financial assets or NFTs. And as this whole Web3 world matures, you will see these wallets being able to do much more. Then goes marketplaces. So marketplaces such as OpenSea, Coinbase, like it's an exchange, but so Binance. So these places, they allow us to buy assets, sell assets, trade assets. So these are the next area that's allowing us to interact with the Web3 technologies. And Web2 is still there. Some people, they have simple websites, like, for example, Reddit tried to do that. That it's a Reddit, it's a Web2 website. You log in with the normal ways, but you can buy NFTs there. So there's still implementation of how to connect Web2 technologies to Web3. And you don't have to follow this whole stack. You can pick and choose what you want, but this is the ideal Web3 stack today looks like, where these are the different layers that form the Web3. Now, in the beginning of this, I mentioned metaverse. So this is the web, and metaverse is the 3D representation of all this. So just because Facebook said metaverse, we can call it by any means possible. Right now, for example, I'm doing this presentation in a 2D environment. But if this environment was 3D and all these things were inside the 3D environment, that we can call a virtual or mixed reality or metaverse. Right now, everyone is stuck on the terms, but metaverse encompasses the whole thing, whole experience of it. It's the experiential layer, and Web3 is this technical layer and the applications that we are building within what you call this 3D experience environment. So decentralization, this is where most people in Web3 space either get into arguments or we disagree with others. So decentralization in simple terms is about ownership, decisions, and access. So I'll give you an example of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, there's no one person that owns Bitcoin. Bitcoin Foundation has so many developers all around the world. Anyone tomorrow, one of you, me, anyone can join that and we can start working on the code, right? So there's no hiring process or anything like that. We can contribute. When we contribute, you get paid based on the contribution you have done. Anyone can set up these nodes, the servers. So that's also good. Anyone can become a miner. So if you don't want to, let's say, contribute with the code, you're like, okay, I just want to validate these things. You have a really powerful PC with a really good GPU, you can do that. So in this case, there's no barriers for anybody to enter. Second one is decisions. So anyone can make decisions in this. So if you have a mining machine or a validator, and I have it, we all can validate, and there's no one person over other. However, the power of those machines do matter. And that's why I was saying, in theory, this is a really, really good scenario. And we will go over the risks right after. So access is anyone can create a Bitcoin wallet, anyone can transfer money to anyone can hold it. So in a theoretical world, this looks beautiful, that decentralization can solve almost everything. However,
we have couple questions, and maybe you will cover them in your next slides as well.
Yep.
But let me ask right now. So one of the question was, is Web3 and the push to decentralization going to enable more criminal activities and hidden identities?
You are absolutely right. Yes and no. So people say that road to hell was paved with good intentions, right? So again, that's why I keep saying, it's in theory, Web3 is supposed to be more secure, more accountable, and more better for almost everybody. But initial stages, yes, it's going to invite more people. And that was my next question. Next slide, that there are risks. Scam is one of the biggest problems because nobody understands the technology is so new and there's so many scams, and anyone can claim to be anybody, right? There's Ethereum, and then you can launch Ethereum 2.0, and people who are experienced, they will know, but people who don't know much about it, they'll be like, wow, somebody's sending me Ethereum. So scams will continue to go up. That's why we need to think about security first. And Web 2 and Web 1 security authentication was an afterthought. If we continue to make those mistakes in Web 3, that'll be a disaster. That'll be a disaster because just imagine you are running your own city. And in your city, you do not have a way to validate people. You do not have a way to authenticate people from access perspective. Now, anyone can be the mayor of the city. Anyone can do whatever they want. And yeah, however, you can set up systems, but there's no central body that you need to go to. So sometimes removing, that's why I put, it's kind of like two-edged sword. Removing the central authority, you can't go to them for mistakes. Like, just imagine, how would you police your city? Who will you call? Like, let's say right now, at least we know we have police or army or doctors. Those are central authorities that we go to when we need 911 or some kind of need. Just imagine all of us are running police department and call comes in and we are like, hey, I have a date right now, so I have to go, or I have to go to the movies, or I'm cooking my dinner, I can't show up. And those kind of problems happen. So right now in Web3 context, if you have, let's say, certain amount of cryptocurrencies in your wallet, and I go and steal it, there's nobody you can go to. And that's a problem. Because on the what you call on the ledger is going to show that you transferred the money to my wallet. And it's just going to look like, okay, they may have agreed to something and this person transferred money to that person and that's it. Because there's no way to show whether you actually had the ownership. Whereas in real world, if let's say I were to transfer funds from my bank to somebody somewhere, and let's say they didn't provide, or Amex, like for our credit cards or MasterCard, they have these insurances on. They're like, hey, if someone scammed you, we will refund the amount that you were scammed at. No, yeah.
But it's also for kind of like continuity of your assets, like protecting your assets, similar to physical assets when we have, let's say, a will, right? And somebody can take your house that you owned, for example, and as an inheritance. Now, if you have assets online attached to your identity and no one is managing that, so regarding the risk of lack of central authority, maybe regulations around that, is there a risk then? How would someone take care of those assets? Like, where would the assets go? What would happen to that?
So if I understand correctly, let's say I have my house and I have a wallet and I have my house lead, like the what you call ownership records are in my wallet, and someone says, okay, Sid transferred this ownership to me. Who should I go to in that sense? Is that the question?
No, maybe more of in case of something happens to the person, right? In case of inheritance,
Oh, okay.
passing over the assets and so
I
on.
see. Okay. So that's actually a good thing. So I have more details about that, and that's covered there. So would you like me to finish this and then I can address that? Because
Maybe
that
another, maybe another question or comment from the audience that we have. So there is a curiosity to see what you think, how you see decentralization working in managing academic credentials to prevent fake credentials and so on.
Yeah, I'm actually in total agreement about decentralized. So when we say decentralization, we are not saying that decentralization is that any authority can issue Harvard degrees. Harvard will still be the one issuing their own degrees. However, Harvard doesn't have to store all the degrees with them. So the moment they transfer the degrees, it's kind of like government issues us driver's license, but our driver's license stay with us, right? Right now, what happens is like we do get this paper degree, but paper degrees can easily be faked. So if I were to take my paper degree to my employer will look at it and they'll be like, yeah, they will accept or they may not. Or they have to call background company, and background check company will have to confirm that with Harvard or whatever school you went to, and the registrar there has to confirm directly, and that's a tedious process and it's costly process. In decentralized identity situation, Harvard issues you a degree, you receive a verifiable credential in your wallet, and after that, let's say you go to an employer, you will share that credential. You can also share that credential on your LinkedIn, and it's just a URL. They will go and they will verify that it's there. And if they want further verification, they can also just simply go there and request for verification directly from Harvard. And all Harvard has to do is, yes, this is verified. That's it. So there's no phone calls, there's no middle person. So that's where the power of decentralization is, who's holding the data and who has the power. Here, the power does reside with the user because you have the data, you have your credentials. Even if, let's say, the university gets shut down, you can still go and track on the blockchain what was the date and time this credential was issued to you. And based on how the blockchain is, how these companies decide to do, and how much data. So all user data is not publicly available. That's also a beautiful thing. Only the result of it, or you will only see if this is true or this is not true. So I'm totally in support of verifiable credentials for universities because that allows we can get jobs faster, and also we can verify credentials much faster without having to pay so much money to intermediate parties for background checks.
I think we have some technical difficulties with your video, Sid.
Oh, okay.
Just check on your camera quickly.
Fair enough. Can you see me now?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I hope that explains, but I do support decentralization of verifiable credentials, not just for education, for also employment records. So sometimes we work with a company and that company goes under, and now all your records are gone. Now, at least in this case, they are verifiable even if the company doesn't exist, because the beauty of the blockchain is that it's immutable. You can verify even though the individual company. So it's a really good system of record keeping.
So before we move on, just maybe a couple more questions by our audience. Simply because you are on this topic and maybe you will cover, but anyway. So one question is, if is Web3 tech and tech well and truly be the only way to obtain complete privacy in today's ecosystem? Yeah, so that's one question. And similar question is, will Web3 eventually make Web2 obsolete?
I love both questions. Those are really, really good questions. So first one, I don't think Web3 is the only solution to absolute privacy. If executed effectively, yes, but I think it's not going to. Even right now, we have this ways to actually be anonymous or be private, but those solutions are difficult and sometimes they're not as user friendly. And when it comes to security, we all know like complications. Nobody likes to go through difficulty or bad user experience. People will choose easy and convenience over security anytime. So yes, if implemented effectively, Web3 can provide you with privacy. However, to get to that, I think it's going to be more difficult than current state even. Because end of the day, think of it this way. So when they say that you have to host your own wallet, your wallet is on your phone. And I'm just giving an example because that's a beautiful question. So your wallet is on your phone. You forgot to, or you didn't kept a copy of this wallet anywhere else. So you lost every single thing. That's one thing. Well, solution is you can go to what you call the places where you acquired these credentials. You can get them back again. That's fine. But the places where you signed up with private keys, and if you don't have the same, what you call your backup keys or private keys, you won't be able to restore. So basically, if you logged in, let's say hypothetically, in a future Google or Facebook, using your one of the many identities that you want to use. So let's say, let's call it disposable usernames. And you had a really good following, you had people following you. Now, when you log in, you will have 0 followers because to what you call that platform, you are a brand new user. If you lost your keys, now, if you have your keys, you can replicate this wallet other places, but then it comes with more thing. You have to protect these keys. So same inconveniences that we have in Web 2, I would say the degree will be less, but I think the complexity or the technical knowledge has to be increased to really truly take advantage of their privacy. So for example, right now, many people don't use actual, what you call physical keys. Physical keys can be lost. So you have to think about, if I lose this, what's going to happen? And right now, at least we can go to Google and we can say, hey, reset my password. You can't go to any place and say, reset my password, or can you reboot? But I do think what's going to happen is more and more companies will come up and they will say backup as a service. So we will, privacy is one of those things. It should really be, you have to understand what's your surface area that you are trying to protect and what's your threat model like. So if you're just everyday person, just like you and I think for that Web3 is good. But if there's somebody who's in public eye and they have law enforcement or something, for them, they have to be a bit more tech savvy to figure things out, because it's gonna become a little bit more difficult. But it will definitely provide less tracking. Because right now, I was watching one of the talks, and you could, even though your data is off on your phone, you can still track the person. And the individual who was responsible for one of the government agents for Donald Trump's security, they tracked basically where he took the president and came back. So that I think that's a security risk, because everyday people like you and I shouldn't be able to. So right now there's so many practices. I think they will get better. And I think second question was, can you repeat the second question? Sorry.
Yes, there are more questions, but so
Okay.
the question was about if Web3 will eventually make Web2 obsolete.
Absolutely. So it's going to be a slow transition, but yes. And right now there's a talk of Web 5, which is started by Jack Dorsey. That's that instead of just thinking about ownership, we have to think about identity first. So, but I do think, yeah, just like Web 2 made Web 1 obsolete, and very few, far few, like I don't know what's the percentage around the world, people still use same protocol, same encryption, same stuff, or even open sites. I think it's going to be in a similar situation, but most people will move towards Web3.
And I know we talked a lot about already different threats and risks with Web3. The question here in audience we have is that how is Web3 protected from insider threats? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this topic.
How is Web3 protected from insider rights?
Insider threats.
Oh, insider
Like with,
threats.
yes.
And I think it's not, and that's why I put open source here, because one of the foundations of Web3 is that your code should be open source. Everyone should be able to see it. There's nothing to hide. But I don't think it works for everybody. And I think insider threats, I don't think they can be mitigated and I'll be lying if I say they can, because even in open source right now, anyone can create an open source repository on GitHub or any of the places, and we can have 5 or 6 people supporting it, and somebody downloads it. So 0 days, I forgot which open source software was it, and they code is written by humans, and humans make mistakes. So insider situations will actually happen, and I think Mt. Gox or Ethereum DAO was one of the places where an insider took vulnerability of smart contract, and they were able to steal money. So yeah, that's tough to do, but I think it's not a perfect solution yet, but I think it's a evolution, and I think we are going in the right direction. That's what I can say. But yes, it's not going to solve all the problems, and don't believe all the hype. That's 100% bulletproof, but I do think we are moving in the right direction.
And one more question we have for now is, first of all, feedback. All the points are interesting. The audience is very engaged in the chat. A follow-up to previous questions. What maintenance costs and expectation can central IT have when operating such an environment?
What operational cost? So operational cost will depend. What exactly is your web stack? What exactly are you trying to do? So for example, if you are a company that's hosting a blockchain, cost is significantly high initially. But so for example, most enterprise solutions, they prefer to host their own solutions. So and their providers like Amazon provides their blockchain, and those are centralized. And that's where the Web3 community or the crypto community goes back, and they're like, this is kind of like, it doesn't even make sense. That is almost like running a centralized server. So cost really depends, but if you're using something like, let's say, one of the Ethereum's blockchains for your business or work as a central IT person, I think you can save on cost. But at the same time, you have to think about your threat model, data visibility. I don't think it makes sense, but maybe for your use case. So it depends on your use case. But I do think if you want to spin your own blockchain instance, you have to have basically just like you have server costs right now. It's going to be more or less on that side, and then the maintenance and then the upgrades. Initially, the cost will be high because it's a solution that gets cheaper with scalability. And we have our own blockchain, so I know the cost is ridiculously high. And one of the best things is just scale. It's one of those things, more people use it, more cheaper it gets.
Thank you. So let's move on. Maybe I know you have a few more points that you would like to share with us.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
mentioned.
So this is a quick outlook on how Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3 are different. And I'll just go quickly because I already talked about this. In Web 1, we use usernames and passwords. Web 2, we started using these federated identities where one company provides us with this login, and we log in and everything is good. But the problem with this is each time I use Google login or Facebook has access to the services that I'm logging in, my contacts, every single thing. And that's not cool. And we can't even stop who they're sharing this information with. That's the biggest problem of Web3. I mean, Web 2. On Web 3 side, we have wallets now, but I don't think we have the perfect solution yet. But again, it's a evolution. So we have wallets. They are harder to use. They're not user friendly. However, the wallet company doesn't have any information on you. So that's really good. You can log in to many sites. You don't have to create an account with each site. And right now, if let's say you are within the Ethereum ecosystem, you can use many wallets. But the problem that I'm about to talk next is decentralized identity versus centralized. So in centralized identity, everyone is storing your information on their databases. They're siloed databases. You have no control over where your data gets shared with the third party or how. So for example, ChatGPT, they use open source information, like all our data that's available publicly, and they use terabytes, or I think it was 1,000 terabytes or something to train ChatGPT. But now that company OpenAI that created this ChatGPT and GPT-3 and prior to that GPT-2 and DALL-E, it's worth billions. But just imagine they used our data and you are not being compensated for it because they use the data that's available. And by law, they can buy this data and they can just run the algorithms. Wouldn't it make sense if this company is making $100 billion, let's say, you should be an equity partner or somebody, you should be monetized because they used your Facebook data or your YouTube data or your TikTok data to kind of like build some things if you are an artist. So with decentralized identity, you have control over these things. You are the center of everything, but also responsibility goes up. However, you can add people who are your, what you can call delegated guardianship. So going back to Helen's question, she asked that in case you want to pass on your wealth to somebody in inheritance, how would you do that? In decentralized identity, you can do that. You can set up individuals who will be inheriting it, who will be acting as guardians, who can also act on your behalf. And you don't have to give them complete data, like complete access to your username or password. Right now, I have team members, let's say, they have their assistant or somebody working with them and they give their username and password. And I was like, why would you do that? In decentralized identity, they wouldn't have to. They will just give that selected access, and that's how you can actually work with it. So there are many benefits to decentralized identity. Now, here's the workflow. Oh, yeah,
So
go
quick
ahead.
question. Probably you mentioned ChatGPT, and it's it's very interesting. So in decentralized identity, would it mean that as a user, as an owner of her own identity, I will have a choice to sell perhaps my data to ChatGPT or any other company versus them taking it without even my consent?
Absolutely, you will. So this is the whole workflow. You can earn income. And that's what I truly believe, that all of us don't have the same values, or all of us don't see the internet in the same perspective. And that's why people who are all about absolute privacy, and there are some people, they're like, hey, it's okay to share some, and some people are totally open books. And I think decentralized identity works for almost everybody from that perspective. You can share all your data and you can earn income, and you can earn income on multiple platforms. You can share your data. Let's say someone is building an AI-based solution. You can share all your pictures, all your videos. And beauty about data is what we think today is meaningless will be very, very meaningful tomorrow. Just like we used to share pictures and our status and our eating patterns and where we are going with Facebook openly. And today, we complain that Facebook and Google, they make billions of dollars by understanding our behaviors. Their AIs, every single thing is trained based on the data we have openly shared. But also, problem is they never really gave us much of a choice. Right now, we have a choice whether we want to or we don't want to, and that's it. And some people will choose. I think the world will be a beautiful place where individuals can sell their own data and they can earn income, and that could be kind of like a form of universal basic income. You don't have to depend on the government to provide you with income, because our data is our biggest asset. And we're not understanding that even till this day. So this is how the workflow works. That user data is always stored on a local storage. It never hits unless you want to, use identity backup as a service. And right now we are in such early stages that these companies are not coming up. But just imagine like managing so much data and credentials. You will use a delegated backup company that will back up all your data in case you lose it. Also, with decentralized identity, there's something called agent to agent communication, meaning you can communicate directly with somebody without having to use, let's say, iMessage or third-party messaging service. Also, these agents are literally, they're like APIs. Let's put it this way. You can program them to communicate on your behalf. But now here, and that's where I was saying, like, allowing these permissions will make things a little bit harder because we're so used to kind of like set it and forget it. But here, each time somebody requests your data, it's going to say, would you like to share this data? You have to click yes. And just imagine how annoying that would be. So I think where I foresee is most people will revert back to more of their similar practices. But I think even if we go back to the similar practices like set it and forget it, I think we are still in a better situation than we would be, because at least in this case, we are the owners of our own data, not other companies. So yeah, I do think this could work for almost everything. Like, I mean, for websites, for jobs, for banks. Right now, banks are most likely using our phone providers. But after what you call this hack just happened with 30, I think it's T-Mobile, or I forgot which company was it. Phone companies are not the best ones to stay anonymous because with our phone number, every single thing about us is tied, like where you live, your address, and every single thing, because we provided a what you call license. So I think we should be allowed some kind of pseudo identity where if we are dealing with government, well, government knows everything about us, so we should be able to share. But if, let's say, we are signing up for Groupon or something like a deals website, we shouldn't have to use the same email that we are using, or we shouldn't have to go and create a fake email and keep track of that. So just imagine a wallet that can keep track of all these things, and you can revoke access. You're like, okay, I would like to revoke this access. And even if, let's say, you're using one company's wallet, let's say you're using REHUMAN wallet, and you're like, you know what, Sid? Your wallet sucks. Like, it's not providing us what we need. You can literally take your data and you can move to a different wallet. And that's beautiful because no company can hold you hostage anymore because they just don't own your data. You own your data. It's on your device and you can migrate. So do we have any questions? I just have one more slide left. Hopefully I'm not over time.
Not yet.
I'll be okay time.
Not yet. Yeah, but let's move on to your next slide.
So it's just the last slide. So any questions before I go in there? Any questions that I can answer or address?
Not yet, Sid. Continue,
Okay.
please.
Okay. So what's next when I come? So I don't think Web3 is at its maturity, but that's really good for people like us in security and privacy space. We can create solutions and we can educate the creators, because creators, when they're creating, they're thinking about what are the things that will move this industry forward. They're not necessarily thinking from a perspective of security. So interoperability is a problem. So if you create an identity on Ethereum, you can only use within the Ethereum ecosystem right now. Many companies are working on interoperability. That would be great, that you can create one identity and it works all across. Mass adoption. There's very few people are even thinking about this, let alone using it. So unless it's adopted by masses and everyone cares that, hey, it's a better model than what we have today, where we have flexibility to do whatever we want. Even if 6 months later I change my mind and I'm like, I'm going to share every single thing about myself, I have that flexibility. And security first mindset. So again, creators don't have that. And this is a really good alternate to bad data collection. Bad data collection is, our regulations are built that way, that if someone collects your data, third parties can access it. They don't have to ask you. Here, anyone that accesses your data, they have to request permission. So you know who's using your data. And in that way, you can request compensation if they're using your data to train something. So it opens up so much possibilities. And at last, we just launched this app called RePrivacy because it's hard to talk about data when we don't even know what's leaked. So first, let's go and secure what we have leaked out there, who has stolen our data, are our passwords online available, anyone can access it or not, is my address available online? And right now there's actually data companies that steal all this data and they sell it, and it's legal. So we created this app as a simple solution for people to go and check what you are currently losing online. We have zero, this is based on zero knowledge proof. So we have zero idea what you guys do and who you are checking and what you do. But here, at least we are giving users that opportunity to see what you have lost, and then you can protect what's next.
So you mentioned about mass adoption, and
Mhm.
within security people, security professionals, it's pretty clear what we need, what we want. But how do we approach this problem to the wider audience, those who are not tech savvy, those who don't have understanding what it means to secure your identity?
You're right. First, we have to show them what they have lost. First, we have to, like, for example, using this or something else out there, we have to show them that what your data means to you. That's it. A lot of people, they felt, like, for example, like many developers, they felt cheated when GitHub released the automated algorithm that can write code. And they're like, man, you guys used our open source code to train your AI, and now you're going to sell this for hundreds of millions of dollars. So people got cheated. Now there's a lawsuit. First, we have to understand what our rights are. And I know it's an uphill battle because security professionals know this, and the new companies that are coming up, they're trying to save people too. And I don't think they're bad, but I think everyday user has to know that privacy is not something that's an afterthought. You have to know what you have lost. Just like it's inconvenient, just like back in the days, people always say, like my grandpa or other people, they say, hey, we used to trust our neighbors and we will leave our doors unlocked. Do we do that now? I think sometimes it stresses me out if I like think I locked my door and I come back, right? So it became a practice. It became a practice because every day we knew this little inconvenience of turning the key knob and locking our door will protect what we have inside. So I think I'm going to be like a broken record. It's about educating, and all of us have to do this together. And that's why we have to create solutions that are simple to use. So it's also on security people to kind of like send that message with some kind of excitement or some kind of positive thing where it's not too convoluted and too confusing.
I think it's also very well ties into our recent session at Leading Cyber Ladies in-person meetup we had last week, where Sharon Bauer mentioned the idea of reimagining privacy, and that privacy is dead, and now it's all about trust. So we can't expect everyone, non-tech savvy users. I think my video frozen again. Non-tech users or anyone else to understand all the technology behind. And the key here is to create this trust that companies do take care of the data, and perhaps decentralized identity is a solution that will help us achieve this.
But even in that, so Web3 is built on trustless. So basically, don't trust anyone. Don't trust anyone, but trust yourself. And I think I would say privacy is not dead. Privacy is kind of like in a coma right now. But I think if you say your data, your internet, things you are wasting means money, money is always like, that's why Web3, metaverse, and blockchain, Bitcoin, it became such a big thing because money was tied to it, right? So right now, connecting the data to some kind of compensation will be the next big adoption for this, where people can say, okay, like I'm already sharing this, might as well make $500 a month, and that will pay for maybe groceries or gym membership. So I think that will definitely make people, I don't think privacy will overturn, but I think people using this technology is easier to convince them because there's a monetary value attached to it.
Someone is saying in the comments, privacy is in a coma.
I'm sorry. We can do a better job, I think. And I think especially today, what's happening, I didn't want to start this with doom and gloom, but it breaks my heart with what's happening in the world and how governments and more pressure is on the companies to share their data with the governments. And I do believe governments should have oversight, but I think it's not just the governments, it's also the foreign powers, right? Like, I mean, I'll recommend a book. I forgot the author's name. She wrote this book so amazingly. It's called I Didn't Know This Is How the World Ends or something. And she went out to and she interviewed these governments and CIA, and it's a scary book about how cybersecurity is not taken seriously by even US, Canada, and Western nations. And countries around the world, they are taking advantage of that. They are hacking banks. And problem is, not that many companies are reporting it. So privacy is no longer a choice. It's actually like one of the necessities because we need to take control of it. Otherwise, we will always be playing victim or catch up. And we don't have the resources. Like I highly recommend her book. If you want, I can send you the link. And she did such a good job. Like it's such an eye opener that we are in a cyber war, and we are so concerned about sharing our information with Twitter, TikTok, and all those things, and it can impact our security, like generally our security. So, yeah, I do think we can do better because right now stakes are high, especially if you are an activist. Like I started like talking about there are countries in the world they are giving death sentences to people because they were standing up for a good cause. So whatever the cause is, I don't think freedom of speech or any of these things should be hindered by over surveillance, and these things are the solution. So I think we have no choice but to think about privacy now.
So to close our session today, any final words for our audience?
My final words are, let's all be advocates of privacy and security. And this is like the best platform. Let's start with our families, share as much resources, like simple books that they can read. And I think we can change something better. But let's start talking to everybody, including young kids, right? Like I talked to my nephews who are like 13 and 14. They play Minecraft and they had no idea how to get money in Minecraft. And I was like, hey, you hacked this place. Like, so there are conversations we can have because every single thing is tied to money and you. So if we don't talk, and just like in an organization, you need one access point or one API exposed before anything wrong happens. Same goes in our own circles. So let's be, and I know this is nothing new, but I always say, I was like, let's just talk to our family members. Let's start from home, and let's try to make this information simple and easy to consume.
Thank you so much, Sid. And thank you for joining us today at Leading Cyber Ladies online session. Thanks again for CyberX for hosting us on Cyber Exchange platform. Please, for future, also join our meetup group for Leading Cyber Ladies Toronto. Have links on all over the social media. If not, you know how to get in touch with me. And if any questions, join, connect with Sid, and I'm pretty sure Sid can answer more questions around identity and access management security.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.